So, what issues should we take on as individuals or as organizations? What can we do about them? Does it all matter, and can we make a difference? In a movement that often finds itself divided, how do we unite under one banner and have our voices heard by those in power? Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Jim Helton, who will be speaking about the future of atheist activism.
Thank you, Greg. My name is Jim Helton. I'm the National Field Organizer for American Atheists. And while he's doing that, let me just go off the rails right off the bat. How many people think guns is an atheist issue? Raise your hand. A few. How many people think guns are not an atheist issue? How many people just have no clue? Or don't know? Great. I'll get back to that. So when I speak, I am a full-time employee of American Atheists. But I also co-founded the Tri-State Freethinkers back in 2012, arguably one of the most active free thought atheist groups in the country. So when I say we, I'm referring to sometimes interchanging between organizations. We hosted 277 events in 2017, 53 community service projects. We were Foundation Beyond Beliefs Group of the Year for Feeding the Homeless. We were American Atheist Affiliate of the Year for all the activism we've done. We've been internationally recognized in multiple documentary films. And I'm going to talk about some of the things that we've done. I was a state director first as a volunteer through American Atheists in 2013 because of Edwin Kagan. I met Edwin Kagan, he goes, you got to go to this Reason Rally. I'm like, what's that? And the first thing I went to was the Reason Rally, and it changed my life. I came back and wanted to change the world, but didn't know how, so I thought I'd start in my own backyard. And in starting in my own backyard, we really put an effective business plan to do that, which is kind of now the model for American Atheists on our grassroots activism piece. Does anybody recognize these signs? This is our Adopt the Highway. We adopt the highway in front of the Creation Museum and the Arctic House. So it's a great way to help the environment, keep around and access. Now this one here, it took 4 years, but they threw paint over our signs to blotch out our names. Now we could have had the highway department replace them for free, but we decided not to. We tried to scrub them, it didn't work. We got a little paintbrush and just painted back over the names, and we wanted people to know the discrimination that we face just by using the word freethinker, atheist, humanist, whatever that may be. So we left it up as that, and it became a badge of honor, and we made t-shirts out of it. And the unofficial logo of the Tri-State Freethinkers is now the paint spot over the Creation Museum that we did. So I've done a lot of activism in my time. One of the first things we did was challenge Gideon's Bibles in public schools. Is there a Gideon's problem in Columbus? We have a toolkit coming out next week that tells you successfully how to stop Gideon's in public schools. I'll give you instead of reading the whole toolkit, I'll give you the one key piece of information. It's in their bylaws. 1, they can't appear to be preaching Christianity, which baffles me. 2, that if there is public press, they can't show up to the event. In their own bylaws, if there's press, they can't be there. So when we found out they were coming to 4 or 5 Boone County schools all at the same time, we contacted all the press, and the press release we sent out was atheists descend on public schools on this date. And all the press came. And all the press contacted the Gideons, and they weren't able to show up. And then we passed out our humanist book. And anytime we see, we use the press. When you write a press release, you should write it for Fox News, by the way. Now, was that my talking points? No. What my headline is never my talking points. But the reason we're so successful at getting press is because we know our audience. I can't, if I'm going to go write to Fox News and 700 WLW, and I put, humanists are nice people, we do good things. Do they care? No. Do they care that this is a violation, that Gideons are doing Bibles? No. Do they care that atheists are descending on public schools? Yes. But I don't say those things when they get here. So this was one thing we've been successfully doing. We have toolkits available to train you if you see Gideons have an issue on here. Also, the Tri-State Freethinkers were the only group that did the March for Science in Cincinnati. No science-based organizations would step up in Cincinnati out of fear of the political environment. As far as I know, we were the only organization that had Planned Parenthood on the banner. We took over that because we said, this is science. And we kicked out everybody off the committee that was anti-science. And we have them on there again. So we were the only organization, we had over 10,000 people do it. I was so proud of that because they were denied sponsorship by the National March for Science. On April 10th, the Freedom of Choice Coalition, which we're a part of, will be lobbying at Columbus in the State House. So if you want to put that on your calendar, April 10th, it is a coalition. You should become part of that coalition. The Tri-State Freethinkers, Planned Parenthood, NARAL, there's a list, there's even some religious organizations that are participating in this, but getting involved. I hope you have a March for Science this year. If you do not, come join us in Cincinnati. We're going to be marching on Sawyer Point. R2-D2 will be our lead. We got permission from Lucasfilms. It is an exact replica. It is not the actual. And we have stormtrooper marshals. And we invited the Grant County Marching Band. And the reason we invited the Grant County Marching Band because they opened up the Art Encounter. So we thought they might want a little science. How many people heard of this, the Art Encounter? And how many people heard about the billboard we put up in front of them on opening day? Was anybody offended by our billboard that called it Genocide and Incest Park? And it's okay if you are, we'll not be upset. A little bit. And it's offensive. No doubt about it. I do a whole hour talk on this, but I want to get this point clear, and we can talk afterwards. The Ark was an international story. And almost every press release on it was positive about how they're building this $100 million boat. And we came late to the party. We came way late because that project was started before we were even really a group. Because so we were very late to the party. All of it was positive, and there were atheist bloggers writing about the Ark. I mean, they were calling out all the problems with this thing, but it wasn't getting attention. So we had this idea to call it Genocide and Incest Park, and I just put the threat on that we would do a billboard, and we had a billboard company lined up. It got so much press, the billboard company backed out. We had a mobile billboard, they backed out. Then we said no one in the state of Kentucky would do it. Then we went to New York because they said they would do it. They backed out. No one in the country would put up this billboard. So then we went to Australia where Ken Ham's from and they wouldn't do it. But it didn't matter because we had 6 documentary film crews there. We had the Miami Herald, the Washington Post, the New York Times. We were doing Fox and Friends Live. 6 documentary film crews there, including the Bill Nye film, which we're in. Almost every piece of press on their opening day had a negative element to it. Almost all of it. And it talked about how this was anti-science. They were claiming the earth was 6,000 years old. It talked about how they wouldn't hire LGBT people. It talked about if you were single, you had to sign a valid chastity saying you couldn't have sex until you were married. They talked about the $18 million in tax incentives they got. They talked about how 65% of the real estate tax goes to pay back the junk bonds. How employees had to pay 2% of their paychecks to pay back their loan. And on and on and on. While our headline was Genocide and Incest Park, we successfully changed this story, the international story on the Ark. Now, some people said, Jim, you're not appealing to Christians here. No, I wasn't. You know who I was looking for here? Was for firebrand atheists like myself. Because usually the firebrand atheists are the ones that run organizations. And I got those. And then from there, I went to my humanist element of my group and said, hey, you need to do more community service to make us seem nicer. And you need to do interfaith work. And you need to do interfaith work to appeal to the Christians. And this is where I think groups go off the rails. When you have an action, you need to know who your target is. If you try to appease everybody, you will inspire nobody. I knew I was going to piss people off doing this, even in my own group. And it was the right thing to do, and we made a huge splash. We do other actions to appease other people, knowing we'll upset the people over here. The firebrand atheists get mad when we do some of the very other things over here. You have to know who your target is, and if that's your target, go after them. I'm not saying try to upset everybody all the time, but don't worry about upsetting people that aren't your target. Christians were not my target. I was not worried about upsetting them with this. I was not trying to deconvert Christian. I knew the creationists were still going to go. But I successfully got the world's attention. Let me repeat that. I successfully got the world's attention with this one billboard that we had to hold because nobody would put it up. And we can talk more about that later. Based on religious affiliation, kind of going into my talk, based on religious affiliation, who is the #1 voting bloc? Does anybody know? Based on religious affiliation.
Southern Baptist?
No.
Evangelicals?
No.
I think nuns are.
Yes. So it goes Protestant, Catholic, Evangelical, nuns are the non-religious are the largest voting bloc.
Oh, I see.
Now you can make 2 arguments. 1, we're not a voting bloc.
Yes.
And 2, we don't vote. We don't. I hate to say it, that's the facts. You know what the evangelical voter turnout was for Trump? Anybody know?
Something like like 70%.
Higher.
80?
85 to 86%. Do you know what the nuns voter turnout was? It was really low. I'm embarrassed. So I've jumped in. So the evangelicals, if you want to appeal to them, they're single issue voters. I already gave you the answer because I hit a button too soon. But what is the one thing if you want to cater to the evangelicals? Abortion. That's it. It's so simple. They are single issue voters. This is the one issue you have to do. It's very simple. If you want to cater to us, what issue do we have? Well, we went around the room talking about the issues. Did it look something like this list? How hard is it to cater us as a group when we look at all these issues? Because we all care about something different. And should we care about something different? Yes. But this is a lot more complicated. And so it's so much easier to cater to them than to us, even though we're a larger percentage of the population. But when I looked at all these issues, I noticed they had three things in common. And the first was the threat of the religious right was on the wrong side of every one of these issues. They were funding it. They were driving the bus on all of them. The second thing is they were equal rights issues. They were using their power and their dogma to discriminate and hurt other people. And the third thing is, if we had a true separation of church and state, almost every single one of those issues would instantly go away. Except for one. So when we talk about traditional atheist issues, when I say atheist issues, this is probably what you thought of when I started this talk, correct? You know, Bibles, crosses, prayers, these are the things that the evil atheists come up and, get down in public. But these are what we're thought of. And generally, as a whole, we are right on all these issues. But as the public perception, the public does not perceive this form of activism very favorably. Would you agree? It's important, we do it. I love doing this. But as a public perception, this is. But my question I propose to you is this. What about the issues on that other list I showed that we cared about? Are those atheist issues? Dying with dignity, sex education, LGBT. The only one, so let's look at the criteria I said before. Who's behind all of these issues? The religious right. They're the ones funding millions of dollars. Are they equal rights issues? Every one of these? Yes. If we had a separation of church and state, would all these issues go away? All but one, I would say. Racial justice. While the KKK is clearly a religious organization and fighting hate, if we took them out of this element, we would still have a racial justice problem. But do you think we would be fighting with dying with dignity if you took religion out of this argument? It's an easy pass bill. In states that are religious, this is easy. Comprehensive sex education. I gave a talk 2 years ago on that. Do you think we would be fighting about how to educate our students about sex if you took religion? It's religion funding. No, that would go away. LGBT discrimination here. Who's funding the hate? It's religion. Planned Parenthood. Access to Planned Parenthood and reproductive rights. Do you think we would be arguing over abortion the way we do? Now, there are some humanists that are pro-life, but they're not going to lobby. They're not spending millions of dollars. They're not funding legislation. This is where it comes from. All science. The basic concepts of science like we've never seen before for the people that were on the attack on science. Religion is a key piece of this. So, I would argue, if religion's doing these things, then these are all atheist issues. We need to get out of this block. And not obviously get out of this block, but we can't stay in this first block. We have to expand our issues that are atheist issues. So let me go back to this. So let me pose. So we put criteria together, okay, on atheist issues. And we basically said this. If it has those three things in common, then guess what? It's an atheist issue. My goal in 2018 is to expand on that one more. So if religion's behind it and driving the discrimination, then we need to take it on as atheist as the issue. Also, if religion is offered as the solution, it becomes an atheist issue. Let me go back to guns. What did Florida do with the gun shooting? Thoughts and prayers, all the way across the board. And they put in God we trust in the schools. That's what they voted to do. No gun legislation, no this. So I would argue that now, guns are now an atheist issue. Because you're doing thoughts and prayers, and you're doing In God We Trust in schools. You made this my issue. I did not want this to be my issue, but you have forced my hand. So our official response is, we want evidence-based solutions for our problems, not superstition. Thoughts and prayers is not going to help us. Atheists need to be in the spaces if religion is offered as a solution. I am not getting into the weeds of what things work and what things don't. All that I would ask is, to our legislators, is have it evidence-based. I went to a Boone County School Board meeting where they were arming all the teachers with guns, and the bus drivers asked for guns too, and one of our representatives said we should arm the 18-year-old students with guns. And I don't care if you like guns or not, there's evidence-based solutions. Do these things make us safer or not? If things make us safer, I want them. Even if it goes against what I believe. If it doesn't make us safer, I don't want them. We want evidence-based solutions. I can talk about it, I'll get off on that subject. But here's what's going on in our public schools. Anybody heard of Gateways to a Better Education? No, and I don't want to give this group all the credit for this, but they're one of many. Most people have heard of the Gideons, but I would argue Gateways to Better Education is even more dangerous than the Gideons, because they're creating a better future for our children and how to keep God in schools. And they are teaching teachers, principals, superintendents how to legally insert God into our public schools, legally. So they talk about this. In science, they teach the teachers the limits of science. Social studies, math, all the subjects, they teach them how to insert language. My daughter was taught that the Constitution was founded based on Moses and the Ten Commandments, on Judeo-Christian values in a public school. In math, we can learn about tithing. In music, like every single subject, they're giving them loopholes to teach religion in. Creationism has lost the battle in science. You know what one of the worst things for teaching creationism is in the country? If you did dots, okay, you took out all state outlines and you just did green dots, there's two states that are perfectly outlined, Louisiana and Tennessee. But do you know who another big culprit of creationism in public schools are? Ohio. Kentucky's actually pretty good on it. Ohio, not so much. We have personally fought several schools we stopped teaching creationism. Do you know how they do it? They lost it in science class. What do all these comments have in common?
History.
Yes. What else? Notice anything about them?
They're all political.
So the Gettysburg Address, Martin Luther King Jr., all these they're using to teach creationism. The Gettysburg, under God. What did he mean there? He meant the God that created the earth 6,000 years ago. They're having conversations about history and what did they mean when they said, endowed by the Creator who created the earth 6,000 years ago. They're using social studies and quotes in history. And even in California, which you could argue is one of the most liberal states in the entire country, by their own law, this is legal. Because they want to talk about ideas, but this is how it's being abused by these things, and legally, by the way, too. This isn't even illegal. This is perfectly legal for them to do, and this is how they're doing it. Anybody heard about the voucher programs? Okay, this is Milton Friedman. He is the founder of the voucher programs and the things. He's actually a Nobel Prize winner. And he was at ALEC, and this quote is amazing. They basically propose the question is, we want to destroy the public schools. We want them gone. But how do we do it? If we want to destroy and abolish the public school system, how do we do it? And in public, at this meeting, he said, the answer is vouchers. That will abolish public schools. And now everybody is buying into charter schools and voucher programs and saying, good. The whole thing of voucher programs and charter schools was designed to destroy our public school system education and funnel money from our public schools into religious private schools that are unregulated, that can teach creationism, religion, everything else. So this whole voucher program and any argument you hear is bogus. All the claims they make are false about it's better and all these things. Every one of these arguments is BS. It's designed to destroy and weaken our public school system. What about our local government? When we look at our local government, cities across the country, we see 10 Commandments up. Huge crosses in buildings. This is a nativity scene in Ohio. This is an illegal nativity scene because it's on government property. This is the same nativity scene a couple days later, now it's legal. Did you know the court has ruled that Santa Claus makes this a secular display? That is our case law. Yes, we wrote a letter about this nativity, and when the press came out there, they inserted Santa Claus and said it's legal. And you know what? They're right, it is. That is our bad case law that we have. That's why it's also only important to take on cases you think you can win. And they say in the legal system, you can't go by principle. Because when you go by principle, this is the kind of case law you end up with that they can cite. So you have to take on cases you win where it sets bad precedent. Anybody see this in God We Trust on all the police cars? There's a way to stop this. I say there's a way to prevent it. It's near impossible to remove.
It's great.
It's near impossible to remove. No vandalized government cars. What about government invocations? Where you see religious, doing government invocations. St. Temple gets a little bit of press on this one. So the question I propose is, with the religious right attacking our public schools and attacking our cities, state, federal government, and at the federal level, you could argue we're in trouble. So how do we fight back? As a group and as individuals, what can we do? Do you have any power to actually have any effect on the scope of what we're dealing with today when they're so well funded? So I want to talk about what American Atheists is doing at the national level. The Johnson Amendment, religious exemption, school vouchers. We're against the school voucher program. We told you exactly what it was designed to do. We're against religious exemptions. If an exemption is good enough for religion, it's good enough for everybody. Let me give you an example. For vaccinations for schools, you have to vaccinate to go to a public school. The exemption is for medical reasons. Then you can opt out of that because you have medical reasons. But there's a religious exemption to say, I don't believe that. You don't have to do it. Our proposal is no. If that's safe for everybody to do, then exempt everybody from doing it because they don't want to. Or exempt no one. Religion should not have a special exemption ever. If it's good enough to exempt anybody, and everybody exempt, let anybody have the exemption, not just religion. And the answer is they won't do that because it's bad for everybody to do that. Then don't let religion do it. If it's bad to discriminate against gay people, then don't let everybody discriminate against gay people. But don't say, well, no one else can, but religion can. That's correct. Who here is familiar with the Johnson Amendment and knows what it is? Can anybody give me a brief description of what the Johnson Amendment is?
Basically, it says if you're a 501(c) that you're not allowed to endorse political parties.
Correct. And we put a fight against this to stop this, and we succeeded at the beginning of the year, January. They were trying to put this in here so that preachers from the pulpit could endorse candidates. Now, they've been doing this for years because they have Pulpit Free Sunday, where they record the preacher saying, I endorse Donald Trump, or I endorse X candidate, and then they mail it to the IRS. That's back when they had tapes, how long they've been doing this. And say, what are you going to do about it? And the IRS has done nothing for as long as I can remember. But, Donald Trump and the organization wants to get rid of the Johnson Amendment. They brought it back again. Just this week, they're putting it in another bill. Now, is the scariest part endorsing candidates? No. It's actually the part we care about the least. Because they're already doing that anyway, to be honest. The scary part about the Johnson Amendment that nobody's talking about is this super PACs, as we know them today, would go away. If you donate, if you said, Jim, I loved your presentation, I want to give American Atheists $10,000. I would say thank you. And you would say, I need to be anonymous. And I would say, we can't legally do that. I cannot keep you anonymous. But as a church, if you want to go give them $10 million and say, I want to be anonymous, they're going to be like, that's no problem. It would allow churches to funnel money to politicians with no disclosure whatsoever. So super PACs aren't tax deductible. So now super PACs would go away. The churches would be a super PAC, which is all tax deductible, and hundreds of millions of dollars would be funneled through churches with no regulation, without knowing who it is or where it is, and then they would funnel money all through our candidates. That's the scary part about the Johnson Amendment that nobody's talking about. American Atheists is leading the charge in this. We also got like 5,000 organizations or more on board to support us with Johnson, and over like 30 or 40,000 different pastors signed on. We are not taking the front publicly on this because we don't want this to be like an atheist issue. We want the religious leader to fight this because it will ruin religion as we know it. Yes?
It sounded very profound, but can you go over that one more time? How would the church legally give the politicians the money?
If they repealed the Johnson Amendment, then churches would be allowed to funnel money. They would be able to endorse a candidate. So the church would be able to say here, as X church, I endorse X candidate, and I want to give them money. But the difference is, like a super PAC can give money to a candidate, or people can give money to a candidate. When you give a donation, we can track that. It's public record. If you give money to American Atheists as a nonprofit, as a 501c3, we have to track any donations. I think it's over $5,000. A large donation. I forget the exact number.
I thought that super PACs were anonymous by design.
You can figure out where money goes. But on churches, when you give money to a church, it's 100% anonymous.
Sure.
There's no way to track that. Yes, you have a question?
Not even a question. They don't even have to give money to the politicians directly. If the church can endorse the candidates, they can pay for their own commercials and advertisement and do the work for the politicians without ever having to give the politicians that money.
And it keeps the money going.
If I might make a comment, the history of the Johnson Amendment, when Lyndon Baines Johnson was a senator, he got pissed off when the churches ran against it. He was also the majority leader of the U.S. Senate.
Yep.
And so he said, we'll see about that, and he knew where all bodies were buried and got it passed. I admire a competent crook like he was.
But it's not about endorsing candidates, it's the money. I mean, it's the money and not being able to track it. So there are federal lawsuits to say also churches should have to list their donations or where their money goes. Or nonprofits shouldn't either. Meaning if American Atheists, Freedom from Religion, American Human Association have to open our books, then it shows it that. Or if they don't have to, then we should. We want everybody treated equally. Not that we're trying to hide our books, we're very open. But religion should not be treated differently than any other nonprofit. And that's kind of our goal. So what about at the state level? Well, at the federal level, you can make the argument we're screwed. And we're in trouble. We are actually putting resources into state level legislation. On dying with dignity, all these abortion bans, bathroom bills. These are things we can get involved in. We can have a new policy director who wrote some of the legislation for the Human Rights Campaign, Allison Gill, who's fantastic. We have a bill tracker. So all the atheist issues that are important to us, you can click on our map, you will go to it and highlight, it'll give you the bills we support and oppose. If they're in committee, if they're in the Senate, if they're in the House, and when they're testifying, we will provide you written testimony so that you can go testify at the State House. I drive hours to do this. You can walk across the street. So we will help you with legislation that's important to you on atheist issues, which is a lot more than what you would traditionally think, and we will provide you that written testimony so that your group can go testify at the State House. My daughter, at 13 years old, testified against the 6-week abortion ban at the State House. And answered questions from the field and stunned all of them when she got up there and spoke. And they quoted her 4 times word for word. So we want to provide you resources for state level legislation. We're going to track it. We're going to let you know in the hearings. We want the atheist voice heard and local groups and give you the support you need because we know you don't have the resources to track these bills. We know you don't have the resources to write amazing letters on these bills. We're going to do all that for you and provide that with you. All we need is your voice. And if nobody can go, if you'll submit them, we can submit them as well. But it's better if we can stand up there and speak for or against bills. The other thing we're doing is, we might have to wait a couple years in Ohio, but I think there's going to be a wave coming, is there's bills we want to propose. And we can give you the language to propose good bills. I am tired of playing defense. I am absolutely sick and tired of playing defense. We want positive legislation. And all those issues we put up there, you know what the best part about all those issues are? The majority of America is for them. We are no longer hated for doing these issues. The majority of America supports LGBT rights. The majority of people support dying with dignity. The majority of people support these issues of the environment and science. These are popular. You want to normalize atheism so it's not a dirty word? Fight for people's equal rights, and you will change the way the whole entire community views atheism. It is powerful. and we need to do this. In Kentucky, where I live, almost every single one of my vote, when I voted on my ballot, ran unopposed. The worst of the worst. So we proposed some of these things to them, which, believe it or not, some of them have considered it, and we made some progress. Most of them were very rude to us. And we went out in public and said, and we went to Indivisible, Our Revolution, any group that would listen and says, run against this asshole. Every single one but one is running opposed now. Every single one. My daughter was talking to our local senator about comprehensive sex education. The senator interrupted her and said, honey, you're very well spoken and passionate about this issue, and you have strong opinions on it. So I'm not going to argue or debate these issues on what you believe. And she goes, Senator, this isn't what I believe. These are the facts. It was amazing. I wish I had it on video. At the city council level, most people are aware when they thought LGBT issues, when marriage equality came, that there was equal rights for LGBT. Some people would argue that actually hurt the community. I think it's a good thing it passed. But do you know it's legal to fire somebody for being gay? It's legal to refuse somebody housing because they're bisexual. It's legal to say, I'm not going to give this piece of pizza to them because they're transgender. Did you know that? Most people don't. This is totally legal. Totally legal discrimination. The way around it is going to the city level and passing a fairness ordinance that says you cannot discriminate based on somebody's sexual identity or sexual orientation. Those two words is what we need. Sexual identity and sexual orientation. Now, in some of the bigger cities, they've already done this. In Kentucky, there's none. I don't know which ones in Ohio. There's Equality Ohio. But these outskirts of cities, the board meetings are pretty small. Do you know how many people attend them? One person, 5, 4, there's nobody there. You can have an impact by just going to your local city council meetings and saying, hey, this is probably a bad idea. And if they won't listen to you, run against them. You run against them or against somebody else too. You can have an impact, and we've seen this. We got a fairness ordinance passed in Paducah, Kentucky. And it was a great sign they had in the council. We were part of the coalition. I can't take all the credit for it, but it said when equality is under attack, atheists show up, and it made the front page of the paper. And it was absolutely fantastic. The city of Cincinnati was the 6th city in the entire country to pass Cities for CEDAW, which is the Conference to End Discrimination Against Women. They did a gender analysis study on all of the city employees to show that women do not get paid the same as men in the city of Cincinnati.
Sorry, cities for what?
Cities for CEDAW.
CEDAW? Like the
CEDAW. C-E-D-A-W. It's the Conference to End Discrimination Against Women. It took us 2 years to get this passed. The Tri-State Freethinkers were the first organization on board, officially on board. And we built a coalition that went way beyond us in expertise, and we were just a supporter now, and we turned it over. This should be done in Columbus. If we did it in Cincinnati, you can do this in Columbus. The mayor now appointed a task force to now make recommendations based on the study of what changes will be done, of how they can do this. At school board levels, science, history is under attack. Sex education, the Gideons. In Kentucky, it is legal for the health teacher to say, babies come from a store delivered on your doorstep. Don't have sex until you're married. Perfectly legal. Ohio is the last state in the country with no health standards on education, on health. There are only 13 states in the entire country that require medically accurate sex education and health information. Let me repeat that. Only 13 states. In all the other states, you can flat out lie to the kids about sex. They do. They bring churches, and it is a church that comes in to these schools and say condoms have up to a 36% failure rate. My son raised his hand and said it's only 2% if you teach us how to use them. He also passed out I Stand with Planned Parenthood t-shirts to his classmates. And there was a pink wave during when they were there. And this is in public schools. Now Columbus is actually fairly good about this, but only, I would say, Columbus. Go a few minutes outside of Columbus, not so much. And this is, all it takes is one person to be able to do this. So what American Atheists has done is we've developed toolkits. Most of them are about 12 pages of step-by-step guides of how an individual, like you, can challenge one of these issues. Like, how do I find out what's being taught in my school? Who do I talk to? What do I say? We give you the 1 page of talking points, and we give you a 1 page leave behind. We give you everything you need to do if you want to take on sex education. Maybe you want to take on fairness, history. Everybody had a different issue here. We can give this information to you so that you can do it. The sex education is so effective, Planned Parenthood and Dayton asked if they could have a copy of it and use it as their toolkit to take on sex ed in Dayton. People around the country, advocates are using our toolkits. The sex education one's the one we have out now. We will have a voter registration one out next week. So you can register people to vote. You are in a swing state if you didn't notice. People pay attention to you. What if we were a voting bloc? What if our one issue that we stood up for says, if you're not for equality, we can't vote for you? What if every issue, if I went around this room, and what if you said, my most important issue is X. This is an equal rights issue. They are discriminating against us. Could you say that on every issue if we went around here? I would say that statement applies all the way across the board. So if we're all giving the same messaging, this is an equal rights issue, they're discriminating against us on every issue, we are now a voting bloc. And if you're not for equal rights, we cannot vote for you. Get out. We will not accept discrimination. This is a powerful message that creates a movement. And we want to support groups and individuals to do this. And we've had this sex ed toolkit. I know it's so effective is because we had parents who weren't activists, who were afraid to speak in public. I handed them my toolkit. They read it over and said, Jim, will you come to my house? I have 5 or 6 parents, and will you train us on how to do this? And we did. And within 30 days, they threw out the church-based sex education out of their school. Within 30 days. The one advice I'll give you on this, which is pretty neat, why I'm here preaching to the choir, so to speak, I tell you all these things are atheist issues. When I go out to the public, I never say these are atheist issues. I say, this is an equal rights issue, your discrimination, I want evidence-based solutions. I never talk about religion. Even when they bait me, when the health teacher 5 times says, this isn't a religious-based program. The program they were teaching, we have them on TV saying, what's our #1 goal with sex ed is to spread the word of Jesus. And when they said this isn't a religious-based program, you know what I said? We're looking for evidence-based programs that don't harm children. Never did. We're not attacking religion on these issues. And the majority of people support us on these issues. 85% of people in Kentucky want proper sex ed. I imagine it's a little better in Ohio. This is how you change communities. People are afraid to use the word atheist, or you're afraid to speak out. Do you know, in the greater Cincinnati area, through the work we've done with the Tri-State Free Thinkers, we would beg and plead, hey, can we speak at this meeting? Hey, can the atheists be part of your coalition? Hey, can we do these things? Not anymore. The mayor's office said, Jim, would you please come speak to the city council about sanctuary cities? The Women's March says, hey, Jim, can we have your daughter, who's an open atheist, speak in front of 10,000 people? Jim, would you run the March for Science? So when I stood there, I am with American Atheists, and I'm proud to be here, and I was the MC at the March for Science in front of over 10,000 people. I can speak as an open atheist anywhere pretty much in that city about any subject, and people are hugging me as an open atheist, and people are coming up to me and saying, I was so afraid to be an atheist until I saw you guys. It's not a dirty word in Cincinnati. It's not. We are passing school board legislation. We are passing city council legislation. We need an election, and then we're going after state legislation. These are things that can be done. David Silver in President American Atheist says, if you use the word atheist, you'll change an individual's mind. But if you go after equal rights for a community, you will change the way the entire community thinks about atheism and humanism. It also allows you to partner with outside groups. Planned Parenthood and I are attached at the hip. You know, while I rally my base of fellow atheists to do these things, Planned Parenthood and I work so close together. So does NARAD. So does the ACLU. We're part of the Freedom of Choice Coalition. We're part of the Fairness Campaign. All these equal rights movements that are going around, we don't do this alone. Like, when it comes to women's reproductive rights, do you know what I have to do? How hard this is for me to organize? I called Planned Parenthood and said, put me on your list, and I show up. They love us. But I don't have to organize to figure out how to help women's reproductive rights. Planned Parenthood does that. They are great at it. All I have to do is show up. So even when you're trying to get into activism, Planned Parenthood is a great resource. You have a great community organizer here in Columbus. A couple of them, actually. And the other part is, by partnering with Planned Parenthood, a lot of people, you know, you can kind of stereotype people, which is normally wrong. But when you look at the people that support Planned Parenthood, can you know basically how they fall on almost every other issue?
Yeah.
Not everyone, pretty close. Well, guess what? Those were our people. They agree with us on science. They agree with us on separation church and state. They agree with us, and it allowed us in the door to go into all these other issues and to partner with them where we did not have to take the lead. We did not have the bandwidth to take the lead on these issues. But we had the bandwidth to show up and support them. And guess what? You know how you stop in God we trust? You can't remove it. It's near impossible. But when we were talking to all these cities and doing pro-legislation for LGBT, we were talking to the school boards about, you know, sex education, those bumper stickers came to the city council. And I got a call. Hey Jim, how do you feel about this? I'm glad you asked. Yeah, I don't think we're going to do that. Because they knew it wasn't inclusive. City council members, when they speak now in Cincinnati, said, I like to thank the people of faith and the people with no faith. The priests are saying, I want to thank all the people of faith and the people with no faith that are here today. Priests. A nun came and spoke to our group and came to me and said, Jim, this Poor People's Campaign and this issue is important to us. We want you to teach us how to be interfaith so that we can appeal to atheists in the community and get religion out of this, because we know the issue is more important. Can you talk to the priests and talk to them about how to make it accepting so non-religious people will get involved in this campaign? I would love to. This is the power these things can have. And the results are amazing. We're seeing this from every group doing this. In wrapping up, I won't spend a lot of time on this, but this is our ACES program. It stands for Activism, Community, Education, Social. The groups around the country that are doing the best are firing on all four cylinders. They have built a community. Because that's the one thing I always thought the church had. When I founded the group 5 years ago, I thought the church had a sense of community that we didn't have. I don't think they can say that anymore. And I want to give you an example of what this looks like. We talked about the activism piece. You know, invocations, bathroom bills, all the different types of things you can do. You can pick. The beauty part about this is you do not have to agree with me on all these issues. For American Atheists to support you and your group, I'll pick one. You can say, Jim, I disagree with you everything, but I'm not here to debate you on any issue. Just pick one that you like, and I will help you support you, even if you disagree with me on the rest. I have a strong feeling you don't disagree with me on too many. Community service, adopt the highway, feed the homeless, habitat. I think you do some of these things already. I saw the Humanist at Work shirts with the Foundation Beyond Belief. You know, there's grants for those things. That's fantastic. Education, like you're doing here today. You guys do a good job at that. I know we occasionally look to see what speakers you're bringing in to see if we can steal a few and bring them down, or at least get the subject matter. You've been around a long time and have a very good organization here. You're doing these things. And then social events. Do you know what the number one reason people join groups is? Social. As active as the Tri-State Freethinkers are, every year we do a poll. 65% of people join social. It's also the number one reason groups go to die, if you're purely a social organization. You need to provide more. And if you want to get a good member, people will come in for one thing. But if you can get them to a second thing, if you're coming for social and now you got them in community service, now you have a member of your group in your community. If somebody's doing 3 of the 4 ACEs, now you got a board member or a leader. So this is what this looks like. And these are 2 real examples. So we brought Planned Parenthood in for an educational meeting. Okay? They spoke and we showed a documentary film. We changed things. How many times have you had a speaker come in here and say, that was an amazing speaker, this is a problem, we should do something about it. And then the next month, wow, that was a really good speaker, this is an amazing thing, we should do something about that. Yeah, me too. And after a year or so of doing that, we changed the way we did business. So now we do not allow a speaker to come in and speak to our group without a solution. Because I tell the speakers, if you're going to come piss me off, you better give me an answer. Because if you can't give me an answer, I'm not interested in upsetting my members on how the world sucks. We're depressed enough as it is. You know, I want solutions. So we worked out a deal with Planned Parenthood, and we do this with almost every speaker. Now, not every speaker we can do this with. Not every subject this fits, but a lot of them. So we set up a lobby day at the State House with them. We did a protest, we did a letter campaign and phone bank. So when the speaker came in to educate us on the subject, we had the activist planning committee working with the education committee to say, hey, what activist events can we do with this group? We then took our community service committee and said, hey, what community service project can we do with this group? We collected women's hygiene products and we did a spring cleaning at a women's shelter and cleaned their kitchen from top to bottom. You know, and then we did a social night, a movie night, and drinks. Guess what that did? Our members were intertwined, and a lot of our members became members of Planned Parenthood, and a lot of members of Planned Parenthood became members of the affiliate group of the Tri-State Freethinkers. When I walked in there, and I was like, I'm Jim Helton, I'm with American Atheists, I was the only one. I walk in there now, I'd say over the majority of that building is atheists, and open. They had no idea until a fellow atheist went in there and said, they didn't even know their coworkers were atheists. They knew they were not religious, but once somebody was open and they all started talking, it was amazing what that did. And now our members are so intertwined. It got us in the movement and showing up. We did another one for LGBT rights, same thing. We did an educational meeting. We went with Lighthouse Youth Services, game night. We turned all our bathrooms to gender neutral. So like when we're in a space, if it's allowed, we cover up the bathrooms while we're there and we take them down when we're not. We're doing the March for Science. We told the March for Science we're going to cover up all the bathrooms to gender neutral while we're here for these 4 hours. And we did. So you get the ACEs and the committees working together because people's passions will be different. Can anybody guess what my passion is? I'm the firebrand activist. Other people, my wife's the community service. That's really her niche. Or educational meetings or social. All these things are important. I think we need to quit arguing which is the most important and start work that we need a multi-pronged approach and all things are important. And appealing to different people. This is how you build a community that's really firing on all cylinders. And when elected officials are running, do you know whose endorsement they're asking for? Mine. Even though I can't endorse them. They come saying, Jim, senators, House of Representatives, City Council, school board saying, Jim, can I speak at your meeting? Jim, will you meet me for lunch? Jim, what policy are you working on? Because we are a force to be reckoned with because we are involved in the community. The city of Cincinnati and other groups then we're now added to their payrolls. Some of our largest donors are Duke Energy, GE, these are because of all the work we're doing. We are not considered the atheist organization. Like, this is an amazing organization. By the way, did you know they were atheists? It's the byproduct now. It's the sideline. Nobody cares. That's the beauty part. Nobody cares. And that should be it. No one should give a shit. It is not the main piece of it. The support we want to do, we want to make sure you're maximizing your nonprofit status. And we talked briefly a little bit of that, and we'll talk with the board on how to do this. How to increase membership. These are just some of the things that American Atheists, we can, because I started a group, I'm very knowledgeable on these things, but we want to connect you not just with the groups within your state. If you have a question, I want to connect you with groups around the country that are experts. Like, for example, someone came to me and said, Jim, we have a military base, we want to do something. I'm like, that's out of my expertise. But in Texas, Vicky's amazing. Let me introduce you to her. We want to start connecting you with groups around the country that have done these things. Or if you've done something amazing or you're doing something good, I want to share that with them. You know, and how some of these toolkits, like government invocations, I went to Central Free Thought Florida, whoever mentioned they were from Florida. David Williamson helped me write the government invocations, along with Justin Scott in Iowa. Those two wrote it, I rewrote it, but I got all the information from them. You know, we're going to groups asking, what do you want? You know, we want to support groups with training materials. Let's say you're going to do a protest. I can send you signs. I will give them to you for free. You know, you want to march in the Pride Parade. You want when equal rights are under attack, atheists show up, I will give you those signs. We can do advice, guidance. We have people that we can help you with. Our ultimate goal is to normalize atheism and the absolute separation of church and state. I mean, this creates a better world, and you can do this in your own city. And I would say, out of all the cities I talk to, this shouldn't be that hard here. A lot of cities I go to, I'm in Kentucky, I talk to people in Mississippi and Georgia and Louisiana. They got a tough way to go. But what's weird is, when I go to cities that are pretty liberal and pretty open, there seems to be less of an activist movement because things are fairly good, so people are fairly complacent. There's 10 groups in Columbus. And out of the 10, how many of them have an activist arm? 0. It takes 1 or 2 people to be an activist group. 1 or 2. It started with me. It started with somebody else. Most of the activism piece isn't a group meeting. It's 1 or 2 people doing these things behind the scenes. And every activist meeting I went to, every rally, every protest, there's 500 people, I introduced myself. You say, hey, I'm Jim with HCCO. We're just here to support you. They're like, oh, thanks for showing up. I'm like, yeah, and I turn around, there's 500 people behind me. They don't know who's with us and who's not. They have no clue, but I just made sure I introduced. It was only me in the beginning. I was 1 person. Then 2. Now, eventually, when there's a meeting there are tons of people that we bring to the table. But in the beginning, it was just me, and we got credit for being at everything. And then we also had meetings where we divided up as members. There was 5 important meetings going on in Cincinnati. You could be a protest every day in Cincinnati. And so we look at them, hey, send somebody here. We sent 5 people to 5 different meetings, all made sure we introduced ourselves to the leaders. There was hundreds of people at each meeting, and they thought we had people, you just get credit for showing up. Couple plugs. We're going to be premiering the Bill Nye film at the American Atheist Convention coming up on Easter weekend. The film crew will be there. We're actually in the movie. I have my 30 seconds of fame, if you want to get it. I actually had I'll talk about this later, I'll stick around. I actually had to tour the Ark with Bill Nye and his film crew, which was actually my favorite part of it. Bill Nye turns to me and says, Jim, I'm surprised they let you in. Yeah, that's on YouTube. We got that on camera. And Hugh Laurie is coming. House is my favorite show of all time. So Hugh Laurie, there are a couple tickets left. It is going to sell out. We are going to sell out in this event. Hugh Laurie is probably, I would say, the biggest name that an atheist convention's ever got out of the community. Because he's not normally associated with the atheist activism. This is an A-list celebrity that can really open the door to normalizing atheism when you start seeing these types of people come to these conventions. So I'm very excited. And my daughter, this is from the cover of USA Today, she's speaking right after Hugh Laurie. And one of the things we're doing is training students to speak. You have the March for Our Lives coming up. We can train student speakers. My daughter speaks all over the country now. All over the country at 13 years old. And she got upset and said, I want a voice, I want to say something. She was quiet, afraid to talk to you even individually. Her first speech was less than 20 seconds. And it was considered the best speech at the rally. Now she's up to 10 minutes. But we can get students to speak. People listen to students. They do. They don't listen to us sometimes. But you want to change that. Get your students to speak. Get the youth. But you have to be welcoming to the youth, and you have to entertain, you have to have them want to come out. So you have to make this go for them. Give them a voice. Get them involved. That's the one thing I'm probably most proud of. Our age groups, if you come to our meetings, are anywhere from grade school kids all the way to retired. A very diverse group there. So here's kind of my ask. If you're not a member of American Atheist, I have some things. Please become a member of American Atheist or consider upgrading your membership. We're looking, I think you're already an affiliate of American Atheist. We're working on something to make it local partners. Kind of like how a humanist has their affiliates and their chapters, American Atheist is looking to do the same. A whole level of resources we want to give to the groups that are actively doing things. Right now, my job is to say yes when you ask me for something. My goal is by 2019 is to have that in writing, and I've already started of what that looks like. But I was tasked with put it in writing, but I'm like, you know what? I don't want to put it in writing now. Because I don't want to create what I think everybody needs. I want to travel the country hearing what you need, write that down, and then we'll come up with something. But in the meantime, since we don't have it in writing, can I just say yes a lot? And they're like,